Do you think that's enough drink you're pouring in there?
You know, a lot of people say, how do you know when you've made it? How do you know that you've actually achieved something? Well, let me tell you. In this business, the way you can tell is if you have a band. The band comes on your show, or if you have a band for your show. Well, let me be clear. We have not made it. But this week, we do have a band. And I'd like to thank them for coming in and playing. So let's go right away to the band.
Thought I knew you, I was wrong. There's so many of you to meet. I went to see you, you were gone. I guess you didn't have the time to think I told them they were wrong. You really weren't that way. Well, now I know who was right. You're changing day to day. When we were together, I was yours. You were never mine.
All right, so let's go right to our man on the street, the man we've all been waiting for, MrPets.com, Arthur. Let's see what Arthur has for us this week.
Hello, Brooke here. I am standing in for Arthur. He is off getting a rabies shot. Or something.
Oh, well, I hope he's okay. Thanks for standing in for Brooke. What do you have?
I think he will be fine. This week we have a Mezcal. Specifically a AdwJ artisan Joven, which, I believe, translates to young craftsman.
Well, that looks very, very good. Thank you for standing in for Arthur. I appreciate it.
Hope you enjoy.
I'm sure we will. All right, here we go. The beautiful Mezcal. All right, so let's get right into it because we're not here to talk. We're here to drink. So let's see what we're going to do here. All right, so first, let's drink it. Just a pinch between cheek and gum. That's how they say it. All right, so here we go. This is, as we stated, a Mezcal. So it's a tequila that's brewed differently. For those who are unfamiliar, let's review. It's kind of similar to the concept of bourbon versus rye, right? Where you have a bourbon, which is made from a mash, and then you have rye, which is simply made from just pure rye and burnt in specific casks. In the case of Mezcal, it's the tequila made from the agave, but it's made from a unique agave and made in a slightly different manner. So, okay, so it's similar to but different from, if you follow what I'm saying. All right, so let's go to the drinking portion. All right, okay. First, a sniff. Strong, and it has a medicinal kind of a Band-Aid. I know that sounds weird, but my partner always says it's a Band-Aid smell. And I can't disagree. It's kind of a Band-Aid-y smell. Band-Aid-y. Got a nice bite. In a short snort. A little on the tip. A little here on the tongue. In a longer one, it has a thick, very thick tongue feel. The bite is in the back of your throat, above your tongue, up here somewhere. Good. Now let's take a long snort and see what it tastes like and what the burn is, because that's the rest of the chest burn. Amazingly enough, almost no burn. Once you get it past your throat, if you enjoy the flavor, there's no afterbite. There's no punishment for the drink. All right. I kind of like it. I have to say, it's kind of good. Let's Aqua Dolce Artisanal Joven, or Joven is how you say it in Mexico, because you say the J like an H. Joven, which means a young artisanal or craft Mezcal by AdwJ. I give this distinctively a barstool order again. Absolutely. Drink up. We want to get right into the toast. So guess what time it is, friends? Do you know? All right, well, that's right. It's baseball World Series time. So what I want to do is I want to talk about whom I think to be a historically significant baseball player. Can you guess who that is? Well, if you can't, I'll make it easy for you. Here you go. That's him. Jackie Robinson, number 42, who changed baseball history when in 1947 he stepped out onto the field as a player, first baseman, for the Brooklyn Dodgers. But that's not why I want to talk about him. You might say, well why? Well, there's a lot to Jackie Robinson that existed before 1947. He was a phenomenal college athlete, I believe playing baseball and playing basketball. But even that isn't what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is a short period of time between 1942 and 1944. Everybody who knows that during that period of time, from 41 through 45, the United States was enmeshed and immersed in World War II. And that affected almost every person in the United States. In fact, it would be hard found who it didn't affect. So, during that period of time, 1942, Jackie Robinson was drafted. There he is. He was brought into the Army as a corporal in the service, where, because he was a college graduate, he was eligible to apply for Officers Candidate School. That's OCS, for those of you in the military. Obviously, the number of blacks who were officers in the World War II was very, very low, but that didn't prevent him from wanting to apply. So while he was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas, in the all-segregated cavalry unit, again, not an oddity, because in truth, all Army units in World War II were segregated. Every single one. But he was at this location and he decided he was going to apply. So he put it in his paperwork, or he tried to, and he was not very successful. It wasn't going well. So he had to turn to the assistance of this man. That's right, Joe Louis, the Brown Bomber. He too was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas, in the infantry. Joe Louis, as you well know, in 1938, 4 years earlier, had represented the United States in the Olympics, along with a whole selection of people who did a phenomenal job. Different story, different time. He was known because he defeated Max Snelling, who was, as Adolf had stated, the superhero of Nazi Germany. Quite an embarrassment when he got beaten. Even more of an embarrassment because he got beaten by a man from a race that Hitler said was actually not on human level. So, Jackie, in an attempt to get it, sends in his paperwork and goes to Joe and says, "Can you help me?" Because he was a world-known title. And Joe says, "I know a guy, Gibson." And this guy, Truman Gibson. And Truman Gibson was a black lawyer in the United States, again, a rarity in the 40s. But he was currently serving as assistant to William Hastie. William Hastie was a civilian aide and advisor on racial affairs to the Secretary of War, Henry L. Stimson. So you got that. There's Jackie Robinson asking Joe Louis, who asked this lawyer, who then asked this other aide, who then goes to Stimson. But in the end, the story gets through, and Jackie gets to submit his application to the War Department for OCS, to which, to no surprise, he aces the deal and becomes Jackie Robinson, or as they would refer to him, Second Lieutenant Jackie Robinson. This is in 43, I believe. So, by 44, 25-year-old Jackie Robinson is now stationed at Fort Hood and assigned to the 761st Division. Battalion. These guys later went on to be known as the Black Panthers. And as a result of that, they too earned their place in history. They did they're well known, and that's a different story for a different time, and we'll come back to that. However, Jackie, at this time, is now a lieutenant at Fort Hood. At that time, the Army then sends out a letter saying that all racial discrimination on the Army bases is to cease. So, one night, Jackie gets on the military bus on the military base, and he is told by the driver, you need to give up your seat. This is 11 years before Rosa Parks. And he says, no, I'm an officer, and they have clearly stated that this is not a requirement, and I'm not going to do it. So, the bus driver gets upset, and at the end of the trip, escalates the issue to the military police, who should have arrived and said, there's no issue here. But they didn't. What they did was, they then arrested him, or as they put it, took him into custody, where he was questioned. And instead of just rolling over, he questioned the questioning and said, this is not right. So they arrested him, because that's how it goes. He was then charged with a variety of crimes that make almost no sense. Insubordination, conduct unbecoming an officer, refusing to obey a lawful order of a superior officer, disturbing the peace, drunkenness, although Jackie Robinson didn't drink, and insulting a civilian woman. Not sure where that came from. Regardless, in 1944, July of 44, he writes a letter to Attorney Gibson because he can see what's going to happen and says, I don't want any unfavorable publicity for myself or the Army, but I believe in fair play and I feel I have to let someone in on this case. In other words, you got to help me. I'm kind of drowning here. So, August of 44, he's brought before a court-martial. This is, by the way, for not giving up your seat on a bus as an officer on a military base. But it didn't work out like they thought. Under cross-examination, it turns out that none of the accusers, the prosecution's witnesses, could tell the same story twice. It was completely inconsistent. And as a result, Jackie Robinson was acquitted. He was never court-martialed. He was acquitted of the court-martial. So, following that, he gets an honorable discharge. Now, people would ask, well, okay, that's great. He got an honorable discharge. But the questions of the discharge are a little shaky. It was stated that he was discharged honorably because of problems he had with his ankle that occurred while playing football in 1937 and 1941. This story isn't really credible because you would think that if you had a problem with your ankles, it would show up during basic training, which in his case was in 1942, or somewhere between 42 and 43 while you were serving. It didn't. So I don't really believe that story to be true. I believe the Army realized they had a problem. Here was a prominent person and a successful guy, and they were caught with their pants down. So they discharged him. My comment on that is the following. If you open a bottle and it smells like bourbon and it tastes like bourbon, then what it says on the label isn't really important. It's obviously bourbon. Anyway, Robinson leaves the Army and goes on to join the Dodgers, and the rest, as they say, is history. But what I want to speak to is the fact that here's a guy who stood up when he could have sat down. And for that, in the Drink with Jeff tradition, to you, Mr. Robinson, thank you. We truly appreciate what you did. All right, so that's our toast. Thanks for tuning in.
She wears them